Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the KSAN Black History Month Special. I'm your host, Mark Brown. For the next 30 minutes, we'll be honoring Black history locally and nationally, so sit back and enjoy the ride. First, we're going to take the time honoring Black history within the Concho Valley. Here's a highlight of a Black-owned business here in San Angelo. Since 1976, every U.S. president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month. Here in San Angelo, there are Black-owned businesses around town. RJ Barbecue happens to be one of them.
About 22 years ago, my dad, Charles Thomas, and his wife, Joanna Thomas, started it up. They originally was over on MLK. Then in 2002, they moved over here. Now, me and my business partner, Alfredo San Miguel, we just took over back in April.
Thomas has been in the restaurant business for 27 years, and he doesn't plan on slowing down anytime soon. His leadership has impacted those around him, including co-workers.
It's been brought up from just one man, and it's going on from generations to generations. So, I mean, we're the third generation, I believe, on this.
RJ Barbecue has a good reputation around the area, and I couldn't help but try the food. The coronavirus pandemic has caused the restaurant to make adjustments over the past 10 months. This includes delivery service and a drive-through, which takes up roughly 70% of overall business.
That was my main goal, to do that, is work for myself. Then after that is just to try to make it as successful as we can. I mean, we're going through everything with COVID right now, but I think we'll overcome that. We'll get our catering up, hopefully get a food truck going along the second location we have, and just see where it takes us from there.
The Concho Valley is filled with many stories focused on African Americans over the past 2 centuries. Here's a story about Buffalo soldiers at Fort Concho. Organized in February of 1987, the Fort Concho Buffalo Soldiers take part in the Living History program of the Fort Concho Museum. With the Fort Concho Infantry and Cavalry units, the Buffalo Soldiers help the museum tell the story of the military frontier.
The most important thing is that it allowed them to grow and become more productive citizens in regards to, by getting additional education, learning how to read and write. It's something that could carry on into their civilian life.
Most of the officers were white, but several notable African-American officers served in these units, including Lieutenant Henry O. Flipper, who was the first Black to graduate from West Point Academy. Flipper served at Fort Concho in 1880 before its transfer to Fort Davis. The Buffalo Soldiers of Fort Concho completed various duties within the Southwest region for nearly 20 years.
The Buffalo Soldiers represent 50% of the active duty strength. What that means is at any given time there were Black troops here between 1869 and 1885. At some points, all of the soldiers were Black.
Some notable duties from the Buffalo Soldiers of Fort Concho included helping out with the development of the fort and the city of San Angelo. The soldiers also played a major role in maintaining the borders of Texas.
When you see movies and when you don't see Black cavalrymen, you don't see Black infantry. We were here. And it's important that not only that we know that we were here, that everyone knows that the colored soldiers were in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona.
Coming up after the break, we have a story about some local Black-owned barbershops. Stay tuned. Welcome back, folks. Black History Month is filled with endless stories stemming from people, the culture, and many other categories. Let's take a look at a couple of Black-owned barbershops around town. Barbershops in the African American community, in particular, have served as a cultural staple dating back to the 19th century when most Black-owned shops serviced white men. Over the years, barbers in the Concho Valley have impacted a large variety of customers in many positive ways.
I've been here long enough to see kids grow up as I've been cutting them, and all the way into the adults, every walk of life, going through every experience in life. I end up being the one that they come to get fresh, get good haircuts.
History has shown that the industry had its ups and downs, but it's also demonstrated that barbershops can thrive in even the darkest times in the U.S., since it always has the ability to make a man feel good.
Cutting hair is just not a job. It's kind of a culture, way of life on, some people, they need to just talk and they need somebody to listen. It's not always about a haircut.
Last spring, the coronavirus pandemic took a toll on the barbershop business. As time passed, several barbers adjusted by providing mobile services to many customers until businesses eventually reopened.
I've always did mobile service because of, the older people in the nursing homes and stuff like that. I would cut their hair and go into, so it's nothing new to me, so for to speak. But at the same time, when it's on a broader scale, it's just put me in a position to be able to still perform.
Things may have changed here and there in order to adapt to the ever-evolving landscape of America, but the foundation for the barbershop has remained the same. We'll take an inside look at the importance of black leaders at schools here in the Concho Valley. Here's a story about an African-American principal at Bowie Elementary School. As we dig deeper inside Black History Month, it is important to illuminate the salience of high-quality leaders of color in schools here in San Angelo. Nationwide, only 10% of principals are black, yet principals and leaders of color are essential to schools, contributing to diversifying the teacher workforce.
Being able to be a principal at one of the elementary schools here in San Angelo is paving the way for others that are going to come after me. So I think just making sure that we understand that, hey, we have an opportunity to continue this, this movement and continue to really give other African Americans the opportunity to be in leadership positions.
Mr. Flowers looks up to Barack Obama as one of many examples for black leaders across the country. Research shows that schools with more black principals have higher percentages of black teachers, increased student performance, and increased enrollment of black students in gifted programs. Flowers enjoys his recognition around town.
They treat you like a celebrity, especially if you are walking around, they see you a lot, they hug you, they want to be around you, and it's a really, really, really cool experience to be able to say, man, I was a huge influence.
Flowers developed his passion of leadership through his mentors, starting off as a coach at Lincoln Middle School and eventually leading to multiple assistant principal positions within SAISD. He learned he loves helping kids.
I kind of was moving in the direction of being a head coach, and then some of my other colleagues moved in the direction of becoming assistant principals, and they really kind of guided me and said, hey, this is something that you ought to think about because you're passionate about kids.
Here's a story about the impact an assistant black principal has made at Lee Middle School.
All right, so I just wanted to show y'all this logo and then wanted to ask.
When you think of Black History Month, you think of the countless names mentioned in the history books or by word of mouth. Not only are there endless African American public figures to admire, but also everyday people. Lone Star Middle School Assistant Principal LaTonya Sutton is a prime example as she continues to impact students.
I have a full campus and I can help those kids and support them through any type of crisis. I thoroughly love encouraging students to strive for excellence. Sometimes it gets on their nerves a little bit, but I do all that I can to help them through the challenging situations that they have to face.
Sutton started off as a classroom teacher for over 7 years, which eventually led to her pursuing administrative positions. She has always looked up to American poet Maya Angelou for daily motivation.
There are words like none other. So even in my signature page, I use one of her quotes like in my email signature, and it's do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. And so I share that with students.
Sutton says there's no greater reward in the education field than to be one that looks out for others. For the past 5 years, she has lived by that statement through her actions, and she hopes to continue this trend for the rest of her days.
I still have relationships with quite a few of my students in the past, and I just want to continue to encourage those past and present, and those that I meet. I wanted to encourage them to continue to be their best, continue to strive for success, take responsibility for your actions, and don't be afraid to tell the truth.
Coming up next, we have a story about a black cowboy museum in the Houston area, so don't go anywhere.
Honoring Black History is sponsored by San Angelo ISD.
Welcome back to the KSAN Black History Month special, ladies and gentlemen. All month we honored and celebrated Black history, and there's a rich piece of history tucked away less than an hour outside of Houston in Rosenberg, the Black Cowboy Museum. Join me as I share the story of the true black cowboy.
Ever since I was 3 years old, I've always wanted to be a cowboy.
Larry Callis's cowboy roots run deep. He comes from a full line of cowboys in El Campo, Texas, and started working on a ranch with his father at the age of 9. Callis went on to ride in the rodeo, then off to college, and then ended up working for the post office while singing country music at night.
They say that know about no breeze. It comes from the heart.
In 1985, George Strait's manager heard Callis and signed him.
2 weeks before I went to record in Nashville, I lost my voice.
Callis now has what's called vocal dysphonia.
And when I lost my voice, I lost my band, and I lost my manager. But I'm a Christian first, and I'm a cowboy second. I know when God closes one door, he opens up another one.
And God did just that. Callis says 4 years ago, God spoke to him and told him to open the museum to celebrate the unsung black cowboys in his life. So Callis took his life savings and opened the first and only black cowboy museum in the world, a hidden part of history located right outside of Houston in Rosenberg.
I like history, and what I like to do is teach people history. And that's why I started this museum.
And there's so much history to be taught. For instance, African Americans' iconic role in the Wild West. Callis says he first learned about the black cowboy from his dear Uncle Willie.
He said, boy, there weren't no white cowboys back in the 1920s. I said, how come, Uncle Willie? He said, white cowboys were called cowhands.
In fact, they refused to be called cowboys because that was attached to slaves, just like houseboys, a yard boy, and someone who worked the cows. That was a cowboy.
That's where the word came from. And you call a white man back in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, even in the 50s, a cowboy. He said, I'm not your boy. He said, that's a slave.
In the 1950s, Hollywood got wind of cowboys and cast all white actors, making the John Waynes of our time.
So they put them on TV and called them cowboys.
And it went from there like a tumbleweed rolling on the range. And now this cowboy is educating everyone about what it truly means to be a cowboy, with artifacts dating back over 200 years. Callis's favorite piece in the museum is a wood carving done by a slave who roamed through Texas in the 1850s.
He cut this with an axe, and then he handed it down to his relatives.
How to remember her face?
He just wanted to remember her face and the way she looked. And that's the way she looked when she'd be walking away from you.
When you visit the Black Cowboy Museum, you walk away with so much. But the most important lesson, Callis says, is one his father taught him, to be honest.
He said, if you tell the truth, everybody's going to find out.
And now, thanks to Callis, the truth is out about the Black Cowboy.
Up next, we have a story about a lady who owns the Miss USA National Pageant. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. As we continue to focus on the achievements of black leaders and entrepreneurs around our community, the next person we're highlighting is no stranger to being in the spotlight. She is CEO of her own company, has had numerous acting roles, and now has added another national title to her name and another first as owner of the Miss USA National Pageant. Here's Crystal Stewart.
Crystal Stewart, you are the new Miss Texas USA!
In 2008, Missouri City's own Crystal Stewart achieved one of her biggest dreams in life, to become Miss USA. Now, 13 years later, she owns the entire franchise.
I actually thought it was too big of a dream, to be honest. I never thought of being owner or the license holder of Miss USA. When it finally happened and I signed the contract, I'm like, gosh, God is good.
She is the first person and African American to serve as both president and national director of the Miss USA and Teen USA pageants in the system's 69-year history, and she's more than qualified for the job.
I was a contestant. I've lost before. I've won a state title, a national title. I've coached because I have Miss Academy, so we coach young women for pageant training. I directed the Miss Houston pageants. I've directed a local pageant before, and now the national director and owner, a license holder of Miss USA. So I've done every aspect of pageantry, so I think I know a little bit about it, huh?
But it was never easy. After 5 attempts, she never won the local Miss Houston title and was first runner-up several times at Miss Texas USA. But her final year, it all changed.
And then going on to Miss Texas USA, that 5th attempt, I won. I really focused on my communication skills and interview and having more depth, because beauty is fleeting. Once I focused on those things in my inner being, that's when I won the pageant.
Just a few months later, she became Miss USA.
It has done so much for me. It absolutely changed my life. And I knew that I learned so much about myself, and I learned different life skills. And that's what I want to share with people today.
The experience led her to create her first company that she dreamed of since she was 16 years old, Miss Academy, which already trains hundreds of pageant contestants and young ladies not even competing in pageants about hair, makeup, wardrobe, and interview skills.
That we plan on franchising in the Philippines, in Thailand, and in New York and LA.
It also helps others find the beauty in themselves, both inside and out.
It's just something that I feel is my purpose, I think, in life. I feel that God put me on this earth to help other people. And it's not always what you do in the forefront as well that people can see. It's what you do behind closed doors as well.
But if that wasn't enough, she plans for some major changes for the Miss USA and Teen USA pageants.
I love glitz, glamour. You're a pageant girl, you love it too. So we're definitely bringing that back and heighten it by 10. I want to make sure that everything in the USA system is consistent. So any young lady that walks through or on the stage of any state pageant or local pageant, they get the same high-level experience.
She will also be a leader, a role model, and impact the lives of tens of thousands of more women across the country.
We only take up 19% of CEO and leadership roles in corporate America, 19%. I'm adding to that, that little percentage, 19.1, now. And then also being an African-American woman doing that under the age of 40, I'm 39. You don't have to aim for perfection, but aim for excellence in absolutely everything that you do. It feels good, and again, I hope it's an inspiration to young people, to women, to ethnic women, to reach higher. You never know what's out there. Push yourself. Persistence, patience, and perseverance equals success. And if you practice those 3 Ps, you can get the dreams and the hopes and admirations that you have in life.
Coming up next, we have a final story focusing on Black Americans working for NASA, so sit tight. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The film Hidden Figures shone a light on the role people of color played in getting man to the moon. But on a day-to-day basis, that work continues today. In Huntsville, Alabama, home of Marshall Space Flight Center, celebrating and pushing for diversity are part of NASA's core. Siobhan Bryan reports from the Rocket City.
3, 2, 1, 0.
North Alabama wouldn't be what it is without NASA, and NASA wouldn't be what it is without the work of Black Americans. But not just the ones in the suits, but many who go to work every day right here in Huntsville.
At Marshall Space Flight Center, we find a unique opportunity to support space exploration for NASA.
Last summer, agency administrator Jim Bridenstine announced the addition of inclusion as a 5th NASA value.
Because that means that we're committed to not only bringing on the best and the brightest diverse talent, but we're being intentional about making sure that they are in that room, that their voices are being sought after when those hard decisions are being made, and that is quite literally the only way that we'll reach the moon and beyond.
But even before it was on the wall, it was a goal. Marshall hosts panels with HBCUs where students can showcase their skills, learn about the agency, and apply for jobs.
We know that we have to be leaders that are willing to go out and get the talent, but we also have to be willing to put the talent in the game.
Actively seeking out diverse talent at minority-serving institutions.
Some 57% of our interns attend MSIs. We're talking about Winston-Salem State, Alabama A&M, Jackson State, Tuskegee University. These are all schools that have interns participating in our internship program this spring.
And that outreach goes beyond colleges.
I've been to elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges, just talking about awareness, making sure everybody understands that in northern Alabama, they're building the world's largest rocket.
And bridging the gap between the classroom and space, hearing it from someone who looks like them, hearing about STEM, opportunities that may be unfamiliar or seem out of reach.
If a young man from Selma, Alabama can come and work at Marshall Space Flight Center and help support this huge mission, if I can do it, you definitely can do it.
And following a summer where racial justice was a universal conversation, even during a pandemic year, the agency launched Diversity Dialogues, where personnel from the top down had multiple, crucial, sometimes uncomfortable conversations. And not unlike the mission to return to the moon, it's all hands, multicolored hands on deck to make the agency inclusive and equitable.
And that's all for Honoring Black History. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you again next year.
Honoring Black History is sponsored by San Angelo ISD.